Hey guys, this is Whale Hater doing not a packet tracer today, but we're going to be doing a video on how to subnet or how to understand subnetting. And you're not going to be able to do it unless you have a firm grasp of binary. And that's why I created this sheet here quick, just to kind of give you an idea of how it works. And all we're going to do is we're going to show you how to take the IP address, break it down in the binary level, and figure out what these slashes and these big subnet masks, what do they mean, right? So let's just take our first one. We have a 192. So to break that down, you start on the left and you work your way forward. How many 128s, this is the 128 bit, how many 128s can fit inside of a 192? 192 minus 128. Well, let's see, we can do at least one time, right? Learned that in school. Well, we've got 64 remainder. The 64 bits is the next one. So how many 64s can go into 64? You got it. 1. Now, the remainder, of course, is going to be 0 after that. So all of these are all going to be zeros. Okay. Just delete that. Now, how did we get that? We're just going to take the 192 minus 128, whatever's left over, we minus. We keep going until there's nothing left over, and then you're like, okay, so that's the binary representation of 192. 11000000 equals 192. We'll do it again. 168. How many 128s can go into 168? So 168 minus 128. So at least one, of course. How many 64s can go into 40? Well, 0 of those. How many 32s can go into 40? At least one. So that leaves a remainder of 8. Well, there's the 8-bit. We'll turn that one on. 16s, of course, is 0. The rest of those are 0 because there's 0 remainder. So that right there, 10, 10, 10, 0, 0, or 10, 10, 10, 0, 0, that is the representation of 168 in binary. 1 and 1, those are pretty easy. So the 1 bits get turned on. Imagine bits as if they were light switches. It's either on or off. It's either a 0 or a 1. Now, where they fall inside of a range, that tells you the value. So it starts at 1 and then works up at a power of 2. 1 to the power of 1, or 2 to the power of, I can't remember, whatever. Anyway, it works like this. The next thing we'll do is I'm going to show you how to find the network portion, the broadcast address, and then the host range. Now, if we look at this /24, what does that mean? It's a CIDR slash notation, and what we do is the very first octet has a value of 1 to 8 on each one of those bits. Okay, so it starts off with 1, kind of pretty easy. There's an IP address for IPv4 anyway, has 32 bits. Okay, starting from the left going to the right. At the 24th bit right there and back, we're just going to highlight this section right here quick. This is something. So from here all the way back, that's all the network portion of your IP address. Imagine the network portion of your IP address being like the city in which you live. Okay, and the host portion of your IPv4 address is your house number in that city, if that makes any sense. So you cannot change your network portion of your address. You can change your host portion. Okay? So here we will have our network address. So the only thing that we're caring about is from this little marker back is 192.168.1. Now that is where it stops. Anything past that it doesn't care about. So we're just going to say 0, because imagine that these were all zeros, because it's not looking at it. Now, after you find your network address, you find your broadcast address. Now, a broadcast is when all of the host bits are turned on to 1. So that would mean these are all 1s. And that would be a broadcast to that network. So that would mean that all those are turned on, and if you add up 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8 plus 16 plus 32 plus 64 plus 128, it equals 255. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make this easy on ourselves. We're going to copy that just so I don't have to retype it. Oh my goodness. And we are going to say dot 255 because all of these bits are on. So that's going to be your broadcast address. Now, you always figure out your network, then your broadcast, and then your host range. It makes it really easy because your very first address in your host range is just going to be one more than your network portion. So if we say be 192.168.1.1, and it would go all the way up to 192.168.1.250 because it's going to be one less than your broadcast. It's going to be 254. Does that make sense? It makes sense. So that's your very first subnetted IP address. And we can see by this representation here, it's 192.168.1.1. That 1 is the very first IP address in that range. Okay, let's do another one. Just blank this out here. Let's blank this out here so you don't get distracted by that. We'll say no fill. So 192. Well, we can copy this because it's going to be the same, right? So 1, 1, 0. It's all the same. 1, 1, 1. Those are all zeros. Those are all the same. 1 there. Okay, stop. Now, we've got a 65. How many 128 bits can fit inside a 65? Well, 0 of those. How many 64 bits can fit inside a 65? Well, of course, the answer is one of those. Because if you take, let's see, 64, or 65, excuse me, minus 64, you're going to have one remainder. So we know at least one of those fits in. How many 32s goes into 1? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, all those. Except when you get to the 1 column. Now, how many 1s go into 1? Of course, 1. So then you'll have a remainder of 0. You're good. So the binary representation right there of all four of those octets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what in the world is this 255 nonsense? Again, that's the subnet mask. You'll, instead of saying the slash notation 24 and everything back, the 255 thing that you're seeing here is everything spelled out. So your 255 in that first octet means that everything here is a network bit. All right, stop. You didn't explain that real well. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't explain that very well. What this means is that 255 is, well, let me back up a little bit further. When you add up IP addresses and information that way, you always start on the right and go left, right? Or left, correct? When you add up subnet masks, you start with the leftmost bit and work your way to the right. So to get the 255, you add up 128 plus 64 plus 32 plus 16 plus 8 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, and that equals 255. Now these subnet mask header right here, that's just an easy way to help you remember where you're at in the subnet mask. So for instance, if that very first one said 252 like it does down here, we'll get to that. If that one said 252, it would be 128 plus 64, which is 192, plus 32 is 224, plus 16 equals 24, blah, blah, blah. All the way gets up to the 4-bit, which if you add up all of these, means 252. So that would mean from here back is the network portion. All right, but it's 255, so that's this full range, and then this full range is all 255, and this is one. But if that 0 had some number in it, like for instance 128, if this said 128, then from here back would all be network portion, and then this would be host portion. Restart the video, or is a network address. In the next octet, it means that everything in this octet is a network address, and so on and so forth. Everything there in that octet, meaning that the 192 is a network address portion, the 168 is a network address portion, the 1 is a network address portion, because every one of these bits matter as that city in which you live. Now you'll see a 0. Okay, what does the 0 mean? The 0 means that none of the, after that boundary, none of these matter. It can be whatever. It's not going to be the network portion. It doesn't matter. So I guess we're going to land in the same spot we did before with that /24. So we're going to say right here, everything from here back is all network. Now the same thing applies. Let's see here. What's our, so it's 192.168.1. So okay. Now what is our very first address? Well, we're going to imagine that all of these are zeros. We'll find our network address. So it'd be 192.168.1.0, same as before. How about our broadcast address? Well, let's imagine that these are all turned on to 1s. If we did that, then that would be again 255. If you add up all of these bits, you're going to get to the point where it's 255. So that would be your last 255 right there. That would be your last address possible. So now we can figure out the host range, and it's going to be exactly the same as it was before. .1 all the way up to .1 less than the broadcast. You see how that works? So it's 1. The first address is 1 more than the network. The last address is going to be 1 less than the broadcast. That's why it's easy to find out your first one and then your last one. All right, let's do the next one. So we've got 10, 10, 1, 0. Now these ones are pretty easy, but let's just go through them as if they were not. Okay, how many 128s? Of course, 0, 0, 0, 0. How many 8s can go into 10? Well, of course, one of those. How many, and 8 plus 2, right? So you can't fit a 4 inside, but you can fit a 2, and then 0 ones because there's no remainder. So 8 plus 2 is 10. Now that's just going to be the exact same thing in this next one. So copy that over. Now we've come to another 1. All those are going to be zeros. Oopsie daisy. And then you're going to get to that 1. So that's an 1 there. Okay. Then we have a 0. So it looks like all of those are zeros as well. So in this last octet, pretty easy. Now let's get rid of this. What is this 255 nonsense here? So let's get rid of this marker. What it says is that everything in the 255 for that first octet, everything here is going to be inside the network portion. Same thing in that 255 on the next one. So all of this whole portion right here is going to be inside the network address. Now the next octet, you'll see it says 0. So that means none of this is going to be inside of the network portion. It does matter for the host, but it doesn't matter for the network. And then that one the same, 0. So from right here all the way back is going to be network portion. So our network address, we're just going to imagine that these are all zeros, okay? I know it's turned on to 1, but just imagine it's 0 because it doesn't matter for the network portion. So our network is 10.10.0.0. That's our network. What would be our broadcast? Well, a broadcast, remember, is when all the host bits are turned on. So let's just imagine, excuse me, let's just imagine that those host bits are all turned on. 1. That would be our broadcast address. Okay, so that would be 10.10.255.255, because we're just going to take those and add them up, 255. Makes sense, right? So our host range is going to be real easy because all it is just 1 extra from the network and then 1 less than the broadcast. Now, it's one less on the last octet. Remember that. It's not one less in both octets, just on the last one, 254. Does that make sense? Hope it does. All right, so that's the last one we did. Let's get that out of the way. Now let's do this 172 thing. Let's bring this off. Okay, let's do this 172. So how many 128s can go into 172? 172 minus 128. Okay, 1. How many 64s can go into 44, the remainder? Well, of course, 0 of those. How many 32s can go into 44? 1 of those, so let's put a 1. How many 16s can go into 12? 0. How many 8s can go into 12? Well, 1. Minus 8. How many 4s can go into 4? 1. And then there's our remainders will be 0 on both of those. So 10, 10, or 10, 10, 1100 equals 172. Now the next octet's really easy because it's a 16. So there's only one 16-bit. So all of these will be zeros. And there'll be a 1 there with a remainder of 0. So again, all these would be zeros. Let's do our next one, 32. Again, this is really easy because there's a 32 column. So that's going to be a 1. And then both of these will be zeros, and then the rest of those will be zeros. Because, 0 128s will go into 32, 0 64s will go into 32, only 1 32 will go into 32, and then there's 0 left over. So that's kind of how I do. I hope that I didn't skip over that too fast. All right, now let's get to this. 243. Ooh, 243. All right, so how many 128s can go into 243? 243 minus 128. So that means we can put at least 1. How many 64s can go inside it? Oh, 1, of course, because we can't put 2. So we'll put 1 there. Looks like we can fit a 32 inside of 51, the remainder. Okay, let's put 1 of those. Looks like a 16 can work too, so we'll put 1 of those. 16. All right. We can't do any 8s, we can't do any 4s, but we can do a 2 and a 1 because that equals 3, which is our remainder. Okay, so that's working. So right here, just to get rid of these. All right, so right here we've got the representation of, the binary representation of 172, 16, 32, 243. All right, now this one's got a /19. /19. What does that mean? It means the very first 19 bits all matter as the network portion. So we're going to put a little marker here just to keep our mind straight. So it means from here back is the network address. So let's figure out what our network address is. We know at least those first 2 octets are true. So 172.168. Oh, hold on. Excuse me. 116. 172.16. It's late. And then we have 32 because this bit is included in the network address. You know what? Let's do something a little different. I'm going to change this on the fly. Let's call this 34. Okay? 34. That means that we had, instead of having just the 32, we got a remainder of 2. So we're just going to turn that 2-bit on. Okay, I just want to show you how this works. So because this octet is split right here, this portion over here is the host address. From here back is the network address. So to find out our network address, we only have to look at the numbers up to that point. So then it would still be 172.16.32.0 because nothing else matters. Imagine that these are all turned into zeros. Okay, we can do that quick. Okay, so those are all zeros. That's right now that is your network address. Let's find out our broadcast address. Now to do that, of course, we turn these all on to 1s. That's an 11. We don't want 11. So if we added up all of these, that would be 255. And then if we added up all these, what is that going to equal? Well, I'm going to show you a really easy way to figure that out. Okay? So let's do that. Our broadcast address would be 172.16. What? What would it be? Here we go. So what you do is if you have a bunch of ones all in a row, especially when you start from the one column and you go this way, you just look up and you find the octet bit that you're at. In this case, we're at 32. So 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8 plus 16 plus 32, you just look up, you find out that it's a 64, and then it's just one less. So it'll be 63. That's how you figure that out really easily. That is when there's a long string of ones. We already said that this was going to be 255. 255. Okay, so now what's our host range? 172.16.32.1, because it's just one extra than the network. Then we're going to do one less than the, let's just copy this, I don't have to type it. One less, 254. Okay, so that's how you do that one. Sorry for changing it up. I hope that didn't confuse you guys. I'm sure it didn't. You guys are way dang smart. All right, let's do this very last one. 209. Okay, so how many 128s? One, at least one. So 209, let's start with that. Minus 128. What's our remainder? 81. Okay. So we can definitely fit a 64 inside there. So we're going to turn that one bit on, or that 64 bit. Let's minus out our 64 so we don't lose track. Alright, so looks like 17 can't go inside there, so we're going to say 0. 16 can go inside of 17, so we're going to say 1 there. Of course, our remainder is going to be 1. So a 0, 8s, 0, 4s, 0, 2s, but we can put 1, 1 inside that, and that would get rid of it. Our next address is going to be equals 165 minus 128, because we can definitely put a 128 inside there. We can't put any 64, so that's going to be a 0. Can we put a 32? Sure can. Let's do a 32. We got a remainder of 5, so we can't put any 16s or any 8s, but we could do a 4, and then plus 1 would be 5. So 0 2s. Just did that in my head real quick. All right, let's do our next octet. 64. Well, we know that there's a 64 bit, so we're just going to turn that to a 1, and we know there's not going to be any remainders left over. So those are all zeros. How about this? We got a 1. Okay, there's a 1. The rest of this is all zeros again. All right, so what is our network address? Our network address would be, well, let's figure this out. I didn't all right, so this one would be 1. All right, so let's figure out our network address. What's that going to be? We have to figure out what our network address is by using this subnet mask. So we've got 255, so we know that this whole octet is locked in as the in the network portion. Next octet right there means that the 165 is all locked in, ready to go. Get rid of that. The next set here is a 255, so we know that the entire octet, the third octet, that whole thing is part of the network. So we know that that one's right. And then the very last one says 252. Now that means that everything up to this point right there is the whole, right here is all network portion. So let's put our little flag right there. All right, so everything here back. That would mean that our network address is 209.165.64.0, because we're just going to imagine that that's 0. We always turn those bits off to get it. Now let's figure out what it would be if it was a broadcast. Well, we just turn these 2 bits on. And let's use that trick again. So following 2, we're going to look up, find that the 4 bits, the next one, and we're just going to say 3. Or you could just add it in your head. 1 plus 2 is 3. Yeah, it's easy too. So let's get this, copy, paste, and the broadcast address would be 209.165.64.3. Now that makes it easy for our host range. Of course, there's only 2 possibilities here. Or excuse me. Yeah, 2 possibilities. There you go. And that's how you figure that out. Probably the next video I'm going to do is going to be one on how to do variable length subnet masks and how to actually divide up networks and things like that. But this is just basically how to figure out what your host portion is versus your network portion. And hopefully that helped you guys a lot. If not, if you're still a little bit kind of confused, go ahead and put a comment in the section below. You guys are awesome. Love you. Peace out. Please subscribe. Please like. Share with your friends. Bye.